right into my neck, okay?
This river is a world famous river. It's a big run of sockeye salmon or red salmon. This year is actually an extraordinary year of the run. We've had hundreds of thousands of fish come in, which usually about this time it's about 40,000 and we're over 100,000. We've been getting lots of questions on how do we fish this river, of tackle, technique. So I'm gonna kind of show what we use, what you're supposed to use here on the Russian River, the fly fishing only area. That doesn't mean you have to have a fly fishing rod and reel, even though we like to use that. It refers to the tackle that you have to use. We'll put in the description below exactly what the regulations are, but it's always a good idea to check the regulations before you come out fishing anywhere you go. The regulation, fly fishing only, has to do with the lure. So the gap width and the type of fly that you have to use. They're called Russian River flies or coho flies are the best ones. You can pick them up at Sportsman's or Cabela's here in Anchorage, or they have some in any tackle shop. And then from there, you're on about 2 to 3 feet. We put a couple 1/4 ounce split shots on there. You'll have to adjust this according to how high the river is, exactly where you're fishing. And then I'll kind of go over that with the technique. But you come down from your main line, tie on your fly and go up from there. And that's kind of just what we use for a setup. A lot of people tie on an inline weight, 3/4 ounce to 1 ounce inline weight. I like the split shots because you can adjust it for where you're fishing. Just take one off, put one on. So this rod that I'm using is a 9-foot 10 weight fly rod with a 9x10 fly reel. It's rigged up with straight 25-pound fluorocarbon line. In these clear waters, you want to make sure you use fluorocarbon because the fish won't be able to see it. On our other rods, we'll have sinking fly line. It's a lot easier on your hands if you use that. So another really important piece of equipment that you need is waders. Simms makes excellent waders. They're starting to make a few that are at reasonable prices. It is crucial to have good waders so you can stock the waters of the Russian really well, cross in areas. A lot of people just come in rubber boots or hip boots, but that's just gonna limit you. So I really like these Simms that I have on right now. I've had them for several years. No rips, no problems, no leaks. Other waders that I've had before usually wear out in a season or two because we're fishing in them a lot. You can get neoprene ones if it's really cold, but usually these lightweight ones will do the job. Along with waders, you need a good set of wading boots. Wading boots don't hold the water. They have holes in them that let the water freely flow through, so it's not holding you down. Another tip, especially during river crossing, there's lots of rocks. The water's flowing pretty quickly in areas, and you will fall. It's a part of the Alaskan experience. It's a part of fishing up here. You will fall, you will get wet. You want to make sure you have good dry bags and keep all your valuables safe. It's always a good idea to wear your wading belt too, because that'll make sure water doesn't go all the way down and suck you to the bottom of the river. So here in the Russian, you'll be able to do a lot of sight fishing, and you're going to be able to see them a lot better if you have a good pair of polarized sunglasses. So make sure you have polarized sunglasses that block out a lot of the sunlight and have good side blinders. Very crucial to catch lots of fish down here. You want to make sure you also bring your backpack with extra gear. We like to have gallon Ziploc bags for the fish. We'll flay them up, put them in the gallon bags, and then haul those up to the cooler. Make sure you have a net to net your fish, and make sure you have a good fillet knife. Here on the Russian River, they have a couple different fillet stations where you could cut up your fish. They don't like you to throw your carcasses into the Russian because it attracts a lot of bears. Make sure you're bear aware too. There's lots of black bears, brown bears in this area. So it's a good idea to have a sidearm or at least have some bear spray with you. We've seen lots of bears down here. Usually there's a sow with about 3 or 4 cubs, and they'll come down and they frequent the river a lot. So you want to make sure that you're aware of that. And then when they do come down, Just give them some space, back up, let them do their thing. Usually they'll just pick up a few salmon carcasses and then head back into the woods. So to get down to the Russian River, there's a couple different access points. First, when you're coming from Anchorage, the first one that you'll come to is the Russian River Campground. There's also day use areas there. Pink salmon, grayling, and the Russian River Falls, which is about a 2-mile hike to the very top of the Russian River. If you go down the road a little bit farther, there's going to be the Russian River Ferry. You'll have to pay to park there, and then you pay to cross using their ferry. $11 to park and about $11 to cross the ferry per person. The ferry takes you to the confluence, which is where the Russian meets the Kenai River. The peak times for the Russian River, usually the fish start coming in the second week of June, and peak time for fishing is around the third week of June. A lot of people will be down here. So there's lots of people, especially down by the confluence. That's where people will line up side by side and you'll just cast one after the other. Good etiquette is if the person downriver casts first, and then the next person upriver, next person upriver, next person upriver. That way your guys' lines will be drifting and you won't have as many tangles. Okay. So now I'm gonna kind of talk about the technique that you're gonna do. It's a lot of sight fishing. You'll comb the shores and the areas with the deeper water. And that's where the fish will hold out for a little bit. Once you spot some, or even if it's a hole that you can't really see the bottom, you want to be upriver because you're going to cast and you're going to be doing this. This technique is called flipping, and then the way you're catching them is called flossing. Your goal is to get the line actually in the fish's mouth, and then as it's pulling and drifting through the water, the hook is going to come through and set in the corner of the fish's mouth. So you need the fish in between your weight and your hook. As they're going upstream, they're swimming with their mouths open like this, pumping. That line will catch in their mouth, and then you hook them like that. So that technique is called flossing. That's how you're going to catch all your reds. They don't really bite. I mean, I've had a couple hit it just reaction, kind of like a reaction bite. I've had them hit it pretty hard before, but most of the time you're just threading that line through their mouth. How you're gonna cast, you pull out just from your reel how much line you're gonna throw out there. You don't need to be opening. If you have a bait caster or a spinning rod, you don't have to open it and then cast and reel in. That's not what you're doing with this. You pull out as much line as you think to get to the spot. You cast upriver, and then you slowly drift it through. Then you pull it back in, cast upriver, and I'm not dragging it through the water, I'm not pulling it really quickly. I'm just keeping tension on it as it's drifting, keeping my line and my rod tip almost parallel as it's going across. The majority of the time, you're going to catch your fish down here at the 11 or 10 o'clock because your line's going to swing through, and that's when it's going to come through their mouth. That's why when you spot fish, you want to make sure that you're upriver from them. So your hook has time to sink, and then it comes across, and then when you get a bite, give it a good hook set. So cast upriver, let it sink, and then you're drifting through. When you're casting out there too, you want to make sure that your fly lands on the opposite side of your weight. That's really important. So what I mean by that, as you cast, your line is farther away from you than your weight is. You don't want them all to just land in a big clump like that. So cast so that your line or your lure goes farther than your weight, and it's already straight when it hits the water. Because it's going to hit the water and it's going to float just like that. If it lands in a big ball, it's going to float in a big ball all the way through, and you're not going to be able to floss the fish successfully that way. And that's kind of the technique that you're going to do. It takes a little bit of time, a little bit of practice, but once you get it figured out, you'll hook lots of fish. When there's a lot of fish in here, when it's really stacked and the runs that are coming in, they're going to be everywhere. A lot of times you'll accidentally hook them in the fins and that kind of stuff. To be legal, it has to be inside the mouth. The hook can't be in the side of the head, can't be on top of the head or the bottom, in the back, tail, anything like that. The point or the shaft of your hook needs to be inside the mouth for it to be legal. Otherwise, it's just snag fished and you have to let it go. So I'm going to kind of talk about what combat fishing is. A lot of fishing up here, especially at the Kenai and the Russian River, is combat fishing. That doesn't mean that there's fights and that kind of stuff all the time. That just means the close quarter fishing. People will be standing right next to you. It's always good etiquette not to come, shoulder to shoulder. At least give some people some space. So make sure you're safe. A lot of times you'll hook into a fish, it'll pop out, and that's when people really get into trouble. When you work your way up farther from the Kenai and actually work your way through the Russian, kind of sight fishing the different holes, and there's still lots of fish up here. They don't all just sit in the confluence. They have to make their way up the Russian, so you can catch them up here also. So you just find deeper holes, little corners. That's where you're going to find a lot of fish just kind of holding up for a little bit. As you're stocking the waters of the Russian, the holes that I'm talking about, there's going to be cuts in the bank, kind of where the river makes a corner. That'll kind of create a deep hole. But also the big boulders that are in the middle of the river, those will create a hole behind them also. Sometimes fish like to sit right behind those. When you see a fish in the earlier season, you'll just see like little gray streaks kind of in the water until you actually see one and you're like, oh, that's what a fish looks like, unless there's a ton of them like swimming around, which happens a lot too. When you're kind of stocking, you'll just see one or two or three. As it gets a little bit later, you'll see like a little red or purplish in the water. And that's kind of what you're going to be looking for. So the limit in the Russian, usually it's 3 and then 6 in possession. So that means you can keep 3 per day, but if you're here for a week long, you could only have 6 in possession. So the other ones have to be processed. So that means they have to be cut up in freezer bags and put away. So you can't have whole fish in your coolers. Like this year, they increased it twice. So it went from 3 to 6, and still they're getting way over their limit of fish that they needed. So they increased it to 9 and 18. That means 9 fish per day, 18 in possession. There's 2 different runs that come through. The first run usually, like I said, starts in the beginning of June and runs through mid-July. And then towards the latter half of July, the second run starts coming in. So I hope this video helped some of you guys out. I know a lot of people want to come up here, come fishing. Hopefully this will help you hook into some fish. If there's more videos or more things that you want to know that you see us doing, just comment below and be sure to like and subscribe.